Hello everybody, another welcome or welcome back to my podcast. As always, if you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube. So, as you can tell, this week's weekly roundup is a couple days later than it normally is. And that is because I decided to take a couple days off, and I was also waiting to see how a couple of different stories would end up turning out, so I pushed it back for a couple of days. I hope you guys don't mind. But we are here now, and I will go ahead and start by addressing the elephant in the room, and that is I don't even want to talk about this because it's just the most stupid, banal 2019 story of life. It annoys the ever-loving hell out of me, and that is the stupid Twitter drama between the social justice Dems and Pelosi, and then Trump decided to interject himself. Basically, to sum this up in a nutshell, because I'm not spending a lot of time on this, because like I said, this story is just stupid. It's really, really stupid. So, what was happening is there was a Twitter beef going on between the social justice Dems, and that's like AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, a couple other people in there, and they were fighting back and forth with Nancy Pelosi because Nancy Pelosi did this interview where she pointed out that they have all this Twitter clout, whatever, sure, but they're only 4 votes, which is correct. I mean, she's not wrong for pointing that out, but then it started this whole thing, and then AOC had to go take it there by trying to make it be about a racial thing, and it was stupid. It spiraled out of control. And then, on Sunday, Trump decided that he needed to interject himself into this whole argument by tweeting a tweet thread, and I'm not even going to bother to look it up to quote it, because, like I said, this is so stupid. Like, I cannot believe this has sucked all the air out of the room when there's way more important shit going on. Anyway, he does this tweet thread, interjecting himself into the situation, and basically taking Nancy's side, and saying that well, he didn't say them by name, he just called them congresswomen, that they should go back to their countries that are awful, horrible, no good, crime-ridden places, and go fix them, and then come back and show us how it's done, which, here's the problem. All of the congresswomen who he was referencing, with the exception of Ilhan Omar, are native-born U.S. citizens. And Ilhan Omar is a U.S. citizen because she went through the process and is a full U.S. citizen, obviously, because she's a sitting member of Congress. So, first of all, the statement is fucking stupid. And it's stupid in a way that's, like, really just this great self-own. And so many people made the joke that, like, yeah, they should really go to their home countries and fix them. Because this is their home country, you dumbass. But of course, it sparked this whole controversy because you basically just told a bunch of brown women that they need to go back to where they came from, basically. And, like I said, they're U.S. citizens, so it makes it extra stupid, but it's just that super racist dog whistle that people of color get a lot, especially people that don't look like they're from here. That whole, like, oh, where are you really from? Or you should go back to where you're from, even if you were born here, like I am where I'm from, stupid ass. But it turned into this whole controversy, and the House today decided that they needed to pass a resolution condemning Trump's tweets, and that turned into a total fucking clusterfuck. And I'm just like, oh my god, are we really doing this? Like, there's so many bigger issues to discuss in this country right now, but you all want to hold a House resolution over Trump's stupid fucking tweets and just devolved into this stupid clown show, and I'm just like, I can't with this story, guys. I really can't. But it's all anybody wants to talk about, so there you go. That's really as much as I care to say about it, because it's so inconsequential, and it's so, like, 2 weeks from now, nobody's even going to be talking about it. We'll be on something completely different. Nobody's going to give a shit anymore, and it's just like, I'm so done. So done with this. So, moving on to the things that I actually do want to talk about. And I want to start with Eric Swalwell nuking my predictions for who is and is not going to make it to the next Democratic debate. I had originally said that I did not see anybody dropping out between like the last debate and the next one. He officially dropped out. I believe it was either Thursday or Friday. So he is the first to officially drop out of the Democratic nomination race. And now he is busy being a reply guy on Twitter and joining in on this clown car circus show that was the House Committee for condemning tweets today. Yeah, like I said, the whole thing is so fucking stupid. But yeah, so he's apparently gone back to being a congressperson from California. And yeah, and that's press F for respects and for all of the memes that we will lose now. And I guess that the torch isn't getting passed to Swalwell. As much as he wanted that torch, it's just not getting passed to him. But lest you think that means that there's actually, like, less people in the Democratic field. Oh no, somebody else joined the Democratic field to replace him. And that would be Tom Steyer. And the only thing you really need to know about him is he's a billionaire and he's running on impeaching Trump. And that's really all you need to know, because he's not going to be around long either. So there's that. And speaking of the Democratic debates, we are rapidly coming up on the second set of them. I think, let's see, it's the 16th when I'm recording this, so we're probably like next week, I think, already. But before that happens, there's supposed to be some kind of televised event that I jokingly called the Dem Draft on Twitter, but apparently the selection process for who goes on night 1 and night 2 is supposed to be televised this time, like a draft. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't even understand. I don't know what's going on anymore. Like, I'm not understanding what the purpose of any of this is anymore, other than it's like a television show now, I guess. Like, Democratic debates are just a television show. I don't know. Like, I don't know. But anyway, moving on to a story that I talked about on the last weekly roundup. And I swear, sometimes it feels like I go weeks between recording these things, and I really don't. It's usually like a week. And that's how fast things move, is that, like, this was a story and now it's kind of not anymore because so much other shit has happened. But to kind of finalize out that story, after all of the bullshit, Trump decided that he was going to drop the issue of putting the citizenship question on the census. So the census will go forward in 2020, next year, without the citizenship question. After all of that, after making such a big fucking deal about how this is just the most important thing of life, he decided to drop it, which is just, it's Trump. It's totally Trump. But what he did do was he issued an executive order explaining why he feels that the question needs to be on the census. I bring that up because it's important to understand what was being argued in court versus what is in this EO as far as justification for the question. In court, and going all the way up to the Supreme Court, the argument was that this information needed to be on the census for purposes of making sure that the Voter Rights Act is being properly enforced, to make sure that nobody's being disenfranchised, everybody's being counted, blah, 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 blah. Guess what is not mentioned a single time in the executive order? That would be the Voter Rights Act. Not mentioned a single fucking time in the EO. So, first of all, now you're put your DOJ lawyers in this position of basically looking like they were lying the whole time, because now the justifications are, he's offered 3 of them basically, and 2 of them revolve around immigration, which they swore up and down in court that this had nothing to do with immigration. 2 of the 3 rationales are about immigration, and it's about, first of all, trying to determine who is and is not getting welfare benefits, which I'm not even sure how you would figure this out, because the second rationale was to try to find out how many illegal immigrants are in the country. Now, if you remember from last episode, the question that was proposed to be on the census is, are you a U.S. citizen? Not, are you here illegally? Not, are you undocumented? But, are you a U.S. citizen? And, like I explained last time, there are many legal statuses one can have in this country that would force you to answer that question as no, but does not mean that you're an illegal immigrant. So I'm not even sure how that question was supposed to quantify this, but the just point blank admission that this was always about immigration and trying to figure out who is here and under what status is just like a total fucking mask drop. And it's really, it's kind of embarrassing for the DOJ because they were sent in, like I said, to argue this completely different case. And now you've basically been hung out to dry. And the third justification, this is the one that kind of bothers me the most, is this idea of like gathering this data in order for states and localities to redistrict their voting districts, like interstate, intercounty, interparish, whatever it is that you have in your state, based on eligible voters. This is a concept that was brought up on the federal level, and the Supreme Court ruled it down as unconstitutional because the point of a district is not to count how many eligible voters live in it, it's how many people live in it. And there are people who are U.S. citizens but are not eligible voters, as in felons, as in people who have lost their voting rights for this, that, or the other reason. So it's disenfranchisement in a way that should bother everybody. But those were the justifications that Trump gave for wanting this question on the census. And for what it's worth, I heard that they have already started the legal process for having it on the 2030 census. But of course, I mean, that's 10 years down the road. I don't even begin to know what the hell is going to happen between now and 2030. I don't know what's going to happen in the next 6 months. So I'm just putting that out there just to let you guys know what I know. But as it stands right now, the census will go forward without the citizenship question for 2020. The next story I want to talk about is Mike Pence's border detention safari. And I say that with all derogatory intent. Mike Pence went down to the border detention facility down in Laredo, Texas, and he did this little tour. And of course, Mike Pence is the Vice President of the United States. Clearly, anything that is going to involve media and cameras is going to be staged to a certain extent. Let's not pretend like Mike Pence is getting some unvarnished view of border detention facilities. But even the views that he got, he went to 2 different sections, or I guess it's 2 entirely different facilities, because one was housing adult men and one was housing children. The one that he went to that was housing the adult men, he's doing this tour. And mind you, there's media everywhere. There's cameras, there's mics, there's all kinds of CPB officials, there's all kinds of law enforcement. They take him to this holding room where there's literally, like, I forget what exactly the number was, but it was hundreds of men in a caged area shouting at him about how they haven't showered or brushed their teeth in like 40 days. And this is what was deemed acceptable to try to show people that, hey, this is cool, it's fine, everything's fine, nothing to see here. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is the sanitized version. Like, this is what they decided was cool for Pence to see and for the media to see. What the fuck? Are you kidding me? Like, this is supposed to be like some kind of a thing that's supposed to make me feel better, like seeing like all these men just in a cage. There's like, there's no seats, there's no nothing, they're standing, there's nothing. Like, I was just like, are you kidding me with this? Like, what the fuck am I supposed to draw from this? Like, I'm supposed to look at this and think, like, this is okay, this is totally cool and fine and above board and woohoo. But it gets better/worse because he goes to where they are holding children. And there's obviously a couple of children that are there that look rather staged, if we're being honest. And they've got on what looks to be new clothing. It's too big for them, but whatever. I mean, that's probably going to be expected. And so they're kind of there, and Mike Pence is looking at them, and they're talking to them. But then in the background of this picture, and they kind of tried to, like, obscure this and kind of blur it out a little bit, but there's children in the background of the picture. And I noticed 2 small children, and when I say small, I mean like under 10, who were wearing like winter coats, and another child that was wearing long sleeves. And I'm like, it's Laredo in July. Why are these babies wearing winter clothes? Like, what the fuck is this? So I'm just like, this is the worst photo op ever. Like, who thought this was a good idea? Oh my God. I'm just like, what? Who? Oh my God. It was just, oh my Lord. It was so ridiculous. And this whole photo op thing, it really annoys me because you're wanting me to, first and foremost, you want me to ignore what DHS has said themselves in a report that they've released. Now, the Office of Inspector General within Department of Homeland Security, obviously their job is to oversee these sorts of things, and so they sent in inspectors, and they sent back a report, and DHS has made this public. I mean, it's not a secret or anything. It's not, anybody can go read it, saying that there are severe issues in these detention facilities. Like, there's extreme overcrowding. Like, there's problems with hygiene, there's problems with food, there's problems with children not being watched. Like, this is per DHS's own internal inspection department. Not to mention all of the other accounts that have come out about how bad things are in these facilities. And you want me to buy into this fucking photo op? Like, are you nuts? Have you lost your damn minds? But people do, and people did, and I'm just like, I'm not going to sit here and ignore this whole pile of evidence over here that people, it seems like every day, and I tweet about this a lot, but I want you to understand, like, even as much as I tweet about this, that is like a fraction of the things that I see come down my timeline talking about these facilities and how horrible they are, and not just from like people that have an agenda. I mean, we're talking journalists, we're talking people that work on the inside, we're talking about people actually in DHS, we're talking about like people who are in a position to know. So I'm sorry, I'm not Pence going on this little photo op. No, I'm sorry, I'm not buying it. I'm not all of a sudden like, oh, I'm sure everything's fine. It's not fucking fine. Even if you want to believe that everything is just hunky-dory and sanitary and everybody's getting showers and decent meals and toothbrushes and all of that, and you want to ignore all the stories about how that's not happening, it's still not okay. Because these are still people that shouldn't be in cages for nothing. Like, it's still not okay. Even if the facilities were beautiful, it's still not okay. These people should not be being kept in cages. They've not done anything to warrant that. So it's just, oh my God, I can't. That situation bothers me so freaking much. Like, and I know I talk about immigration a lot, but I think it's important because nobody else really does, and it's such a horrible situation, and I don't understand how anybody could be a libertarian and not be bothered by it. Like, it's just like, it goes against everything that we believe in, and it's like, why is there not more people being pissed off about this on a regular basis? But anyway, moving on to more immigration-related news, I want to touch on the ICE roundups that were supposed to happen this weekend, early this week. And this is one that I was kind of waiting to see, like, how exactly this was going to play out, because this was going to go one of two ways. And I talked about this the first time these roundups were mentioned, and nothing came of them then. Because the original operation was called off for all kinds of nonsense, cockamamie, bullshit reasons. I talked about it before, but just a brief synopsis. These were originally supposed to go down about 2 weeks ago, and then it got reported in the press, and Trump tweeted about it. And so, obviously, everybody knew that the roundups were supposed to happen. And so, ICE, well, it's depending on who you ask, is who gets responsibility for this. ICE decided, at least from their statement, they decided that they were going to call off the roundups because now that everybody knew about it, they were afraid that this was going to put ICE agents in danger, blase, 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 whatever. Trump decided that he wanted to have his spin be that he called off the roundups so that Congress could somehow, in the span of 2 weeks, everything is 2 weeks with this dude, by the way. Has anybody ever noticed that? Everything is 2 weeks. Everything is always in 2 weeks. Like, I don't know what his fascination is with that. But this idea that within 2 weeks, Congress would do a thing that would prevent these ICE roundups from happening. And Congress did do a thing. They passed the $4.6 billion appropriations bill to better fund who exactly, I don't know, because it's that's just such a horrible situation anyway. But apparently it's money that's supposed to be going to remedy the border detention facility situation and or fund more ICE bullshit. And apparently within the agreement for the money, ICE was supposed to, I don't know, not do stuff. Like, they were only supposed to open a specific amount of detention centers, and ICE has basically been like, fuck you, we're going to just completely ignore that and open as many as we want, which I could have told you was going to happen because that's just how this is going to go down. So, they passed this spending bill, and yet, here we are, with the ICE roundups again, which, thanks Congress. Thanks for spending $4.6 billion to try to avert an event that's going to end up happening anyway. Good job, guys. But going back to this weekend's ICE roundups, it was originally supposed to start on this past Sunday. There were rumors that ICE had started on Saturday. Nothing much happened on Sunday, so people were kind of worried about Mondays, especially since obviously on Monday people have to go to work, they have to leave their house, so you're a little more vulnerable. And so far, fingers crossed, knock on wood, Tuesday the 16th, so far it has been quiet. And that is not to say that ICE has not been out doing things, but it has not been anywhere near the scope and scale that was threatened, promised, however you want to look at that, by Trump and by the Trump administration. Now, I say that the Trump administration said that they were planning on rounding up millions of people, which is just hyperbole in the extreme. Like, there's no way that ICE can round up millions of people in any kind of time frame that doesn't involve, like, decades. But ICE had originally put out that they planned on arresting 2,000 people. And the reports that I've seen come out so far is nowhere near that. And everybody keeps checking it on a daily basis, obviously. And so far, the cities that were announced to be targeted have reported that they've not seen really any ICE ramp up, no kind of extra enforcement, no extra kind of boots on the ground, anything like that. So whether this is ICE kind of holding off and waiting until like the heat dies down. I don't entirely know. Or maybe they just they shelved it and didn't say anything. Who knows? But at this point, it seems to be okay-ish. I mean, it's not okay. I mean, it's constantly threatening people with law enforcement showing up on the doorstep is not okay. Like, this is not a way for people to live. And however you may happen to feel about these people, I mean, putting them in a situation where you constantly have law enforcement fucking with you is fucked up. Like, it just is. Like, if you wouldn't want that to happen to you, then you need to be bothered by that when it's being done to other people, whatever their legal status happens to be. And I mean, this is very disruptive to these communities, because now, I mean, you've got people like hiding inside and having to shut off the lights and keep music down and keep noise down and just try to pretend like they're not even home, just in case ICE does show up. But a silver lining that has kind of emerged, and it started with the last round of threatened roundups and ramped up, I think, a bit more with this threatened round of roundups, and that is people going online, going on social media, and telling people, and every time I retweet these things, I say that this isn't just for people being targeted by ICE. This is information that everybody should have, everybody should internalize, everybody should know, and that is what your rights are when law enforcement, be it ICE, be it your local PD, state PD, the FBI, who the hell ever law enforcement shows up on your doorstep, you have specific rights, and you do have the right to exercise them. One of them being that if law enforcement wants to be let into your house, they need to have a signed warrant. And this is a distinction that I think a lot of people didn't understand before people started getting this word out. And that is that ICE has warrants that are kind of bullshit warrants. They're not signed by a judge. So unless law enforcement, whoever that law enforcement happens to be, has a warrant signed by a judge and they can show it to you, like either you hold it up to the peephole or you slide it under the door and let somebody look at it, you do not have to let them in. And I have seen a couple different reports come through on Twitter of people who did have ICE show up on their doorstep, and because they got that message and they knew their rights and they knew that they didn't have to let ICE in unless they had that signed warrant, they didn't open the door for them. And so there was nothing ICE could do. What? That's it. You don't have to let them in. So that, I think, is at least something of a silver lining, and also another message that was sent out a lot. And this is, again, another thing that everybody needs to know, whether you're a target of ICE or not, is that when this happens, like if the worst happens, if law enforcement picks you up and they can legally do it and they start asking you questions, you shut the fuck up and ask for your lawyer. You do not talk to them. And that's another thing that was emphasized, along with explaining to people that you do not have to open the door for ICE. So hopefully this just educates the community at large, and also these at-risk people, that you have rights and that you can exercise your rights, and you don't have to do these things that you don't want to do. And there's so many native-born U.S. citizens who don't know these rights. So I think it was really nice to see so many people come together and try to raise awareness of these rights that everybody has, and that everybody has the right to exercise if you're in the United States. Whether you are a citizen, a non-citizen, you're documented, you're undocumented, you're whatever, you're in the U.S., you have certain rights, and you have the right to exercise them. Okay. Moving on from that, because I can go on about that particular topic forever, I want to move to a story that leads into the last story. And that is, again, another story that I've mentioned a couple different times before. And that is that the U.S. was going to enter into a safe third country agreement with Guatemala in regards to allowing immigrants to go through Guatemala and whether they'd have to apply for asylum there versus apply for asylum here. Anyway, it had been reported pretty much all last week that it was a done deal, that there would be a safe third country agreement with Guatemala, which obviously I've spoken on, and plenty of other people have too, at least in print. I don't know how many other people actually talk about this on podcasts, but anyway, obviously that would be a horrific thing to do to these people, especially considering that Guatemala is one of the countries that people are fleeing. Like, making that a safe third country would be insane, would probably meet all kinds of legal, I don't even know what, like, I don't know how that would break down legally, but anyway, it had been reported that it was pretty much a done deal, and that Guatemalan officials were supposed to be coming to the White House this past Monday to sign the deal. Anyway, on Sunday, in a extremely surprising turn of events, the Guatemalan government issues a statement that they are not going to the White House on Monday, that they will be postponing that trip, and that there will be no safe third country agreement between the U.S. and Guatemala. Which took everybody by surprise, because like I said, it was reported basically that it was a done deal. And so there was a lot of very cautious enthusiasm, because this is a situation that we also went through with Mexico, in that it was announced that Mexico would not be signing a safe third country agreement with the U.S., but they did end up agreeing to the Remain in Mexico plan, which, while not a legal safe third country agreement, is almost a de facto one. So a lot of people were like, okay, yeah, but... And the excitement was a little bit tempered. But basically, I tell you that story to tell you this next story, because this next story pretty much tells me that anything between the U.S. and Guatemala, as far as that's concerned, is dead. Okay. This one is going to require a little bit of explaining, so I will try to make it as brief as humanly possible, but there are some things that need to be explained. So, yesterday, Monday the 15th, the Trump administration releases, it's called an interim final rule. And basically what an interim final rule is that it's a way of changing a rule, in this case, it regards immigration, without, first of all, previously announcing that you will be changing the rule, and also without having to allow for kind of public commentary on the rule change. It's basically a unilateral dick move to change a rule without telling anybody that you're going to do it. So, mind you, the Guatemalan situation happened on Sunday. And to be fair, there had been rumors floating around for about a week or so that this particular deal with Mexico that I'm about to explain to you was on the table-ish, or at least being discussed or floating around in the ether. So I'm not going to say that it's entirely in response to Guatemala refusing the Safe Third Country Agreement, but I don't think it's a coincidence that Guatemala shut the door on that on Sunday and this dropped on Monday. Like, I don't think there's a coincidence there at all. And so, what the interim final rule says is that those who are traveling through the Northern Triangle, or really from anywhere, if you are coming up through Central America, then you have to apply for asylum in the country you're traveling through. Now, this can mean Guatemala, but what it really means is Mexico. So what the Trump administration did was basically and to be perfectly clear, this is illegal. Like, this interim final rule is illegal as fuck. They basically just forced Mexico into a safe third country agreement. And per the Immigration and Nationality Act, you cannot force an asylum seeker to apply for asylum in another country unless you have a safe third country agreement with that other country. That's why I say this is illegal as fuck. And when I say this could mean Guatemala, what I mean is that it would be very hard to conclusively prove that somebody traveled, say, they went from Honduras to Guatemala to Mexico. Like, it'd be very hard to prove that somebody went through another country other than Mexico. Obviously, to get to the U.S. southern border, you have to go through Mexico. So, that's pretty much de facto proof that, yes, you went through Mexico. And so, you, under this rule, which, to be sure, this was just kind of sprung on everybody and announced on Monday afternoon. So, how this is going to be implemented and if it's going to be implemented is very, very up in the air. And from reports that I've seen, CIS, Customs and Immigration Services, and CPB, Customs Border Patrol, found out about this the same time the rest of us did. So they did not get a heads up on this. They were completely blindsided. And so basically where they're at is they got like a memo this morning explaining how maybe this is supposed to work. But it's very, nobody seems to really know. But the things that we do know is this interim final rule does not make an exception for unaccompanied minors, which a lot of the previous rules, especially, I think, where everybody's calling this Asylum Ban 2.0. If you don't remember Asylum Ban 1.0, it was shot down by the courts. And a funny thing that a couple of people have noticed is that a lot of the same verbiage from the Asylum Ban that was shot down by the courts is back in this particular interim final rule. So why they think it's going to have better success now, who the hell knows? But that one, if memory serves, did make a carve out for unaccompanied minors. This one does not. And again, I keep emphasizing this because this is a very, very new, fresh story, and it's very evolving. Nobody really knows what the fuck is supposed to be going on. But from what we can gather is, here's how it's supposed to go down. Like, okay, if you go through Mexico and you present yourself at the U.S. border, you are still eligible-ish to apply for asylum. What seems to be the protocol is that if you present yourself at the U.S. border, you would have to pass a reasonable fear interview versus a credible fear interview. And I'm going to try to explain the difference a little bit, although this again is a very murky thing because these terms are defined very broadly for a reason. Now, the credible fear interview is what, previous to this morning, you would be expected to pass if you were applying for asylum in the United States. And what is expected to be proved in a credible fear interview is that you have, at least if not concrete proof, at least a very reasonable assumption that if you are sent back to your home country, you will be harmed in some way, shape, or form. Be it by your government, or because you belong to a certain social group, or because you're a certain race or ethnicity, whatever. A reasonable fear interview has a higher bar of you having proof that basically you would have to have like conclusive proof that like if I am sent back to my country, I am either going to be tortured or killed. So it's a much higher bar. And here's what I kind of want to explain about how these interviews work is, okay, you're an asylum seeker, and whether you end up coming through a port of entry or you hop the border and present yourself, you have this interview. Right now, it is being conducted by Customs and Border Patrol agents who are not meant to do this. Like, this is not supposed to be part of their job description. This is something that they've kind of been conscripted into. And so now you're putting both parties into this very pressured position. Because if you are an asylum seeker and you do your credible fear interview and you are told no, that's it. that is the end of the line for you for the rest of your life. Like, that's it. You're fucked. You have to go, you're deported back to your country, and you can never apply for asylum again. So, the flip side to this is obviously the agent who is doing these interviews. Like, obviously, if you give a damn, you don't want to screw up. And so, it's a lot more lenient with a credible fear interview than it is with a reasonable fear interview. So now you have this incredibly pressurized situation on that agent too, because again, you have to meet this higher bar, but there's not really any kind of like rule book that says, okay, it's this, and this, okay, you're eligible. It's very much up to the person conducting the interview. And again, you don't want to screw up. You don't want to send somebody back and then they end up dead because you were wrong. Like, nobody, like, I would hope that these people have enough humanity in them that they would care about that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's going to create this very, very ugly situation if it's implemented. And like I said, it's still all very confused and how this would even be implemented, because like I said, there's been no guidance given to CPB about how they are now supposed to process these new asylum seekers. And for what it's worth, from what I understand, those who were in the Remain in Mexico program before this morning are not subject to this new interim final rule. They still get to play by the old rule where they can wait there and still wait for their day, and that's a whole nother ball of wax that I can go on for forever about that too. But yeah, it's just this very confused situation down at the border right now, and it's just every time the Trump administration does this, it just causes this insane chaos, and it always leads to what should be fairly obvious outcomes, but horrible outcomes. Because all this is going to do is just increase the amount of people hopping the border. I mean, it's... At some point, you have to stop and think about the fact that if I can figure this out, they can too. So, is the cruelty the point? Like, is it the whole jam to try to make people try to cross illegally? Because at this point now, if you're coming to the border from today on, you can't. And even if you were there before today, it's between metering and just pushing people back and just all the bullshit that goes along with that. It's damn near impossible to cross through a port of entry legally right now, even before this interim final rule. And to sum up this story, and I was expecting this, but I swear to God, I think they just set like a land speed record for filing a lawsuit, because the ACLU, the SPLC, and the Center for Constitutional Rights have, in conjunction, filed a lawsuit to stop this interim final rule from taking place. Now, mind you, this was announced not even 48 hours ago, was in effect for about 7 hours before they were able to drop this lawsuit. So that's pretty fucking fast. And I'm not going to go into the verbiage of the lawsuit because it kind of gets a little nerdy and in the weeds, but my reading of it is that this, what they filed today, is meant to cause an injunction to stop this from going into effect as fast as possible. And then later on they will add more robust arguments to the ones that they're making right now, because the ones that they're making right now are basically like on procedure. Like, basically, you didn't do this right, you didn't give enough notice, you didn't follow procedures. And so, like I said, it seems to me like they're going more for like an injunction to stop this as fast as possible and then try to like build on later once this has been shelved. So we shall see what happens with that. It is an ongoing process, and before I leave off on this, I do want to point out something that I think everybody should be concerned with. Again, no matter what you think about the border situation and asylum seekers and all of that, what this interim final rule did was it made the executive branch completely circumvent and ignore the legislative branch. Like, there is actual written law about how asylum seekers should be processed. Like, this is not something that's up for debate. So, instituting these kinds of things like interim final rules or executive orders or anything along those lines is the executive branch completely shitting all over the legislative branch and what is actually written as law. And that's not okay. Like, everybody should have a problem with that. Even if you agree with what the interim final rule does, this is not the way to do it. Like, you don't get to just circumvent written law. No. Everybody should be watching this, and everybody should be worried about it. So, on that note, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. As always, if you did make it this far, thank you for listening. And if you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube. Take care, and until next time.